Hello, welcome to the Healthy Commute. I'm Dr. Dan, this is Dr. Pascal, and today we've got a very interesting subject or title that we want to dive in with you guys. We're going to be talking about the postural epidemics and how it's affecting the new silent generation, aka the Z or Z generation that's affecting us. So, Dr. Pascal, there's a new article that we just saw literally a week ago.
Yeah, I just came across one of the, one of the sites that I followed. It was in 2019. And so they were screening children between the ages of 6 and 7. And what they were doing is they were looking at their posture for postural problems as an indication of spinal issues, right? And what they found was that over 50% of these kids, 6 to 7 years old, had postural problems.
And the key thing here that we have to kind of underline is that these were healthy kids, no issues, nothing was going on, except that they found that they had spinal distortions, meaning that their head was forward head posture.
Or rounding in the shoulders, one shoulder tilting, so any type of postural deformity, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, key thing is, what does that affect? How does that basically affect the overall health of that child?
Well, it can affect the health in a number of ways, but I think first we should kind of just step back and discuss why it's a dangerous assumption. So these are healthy kids. Why would they be screening them that early on? Why would they be even concerned with postural problems if they don't have any pain, right?
Right.
Because we were conditioned at a very young age to think, well, if I don't have any pain, nothing's wrong. Right? Just like if I'm not throwing up, I'm not sick, I'm perfectly healthy.
Right.
That's really a dangerous assumption, right? Because we all know the person maybe who has built, plaque in the arteries for 17 years with no symptoms, and then they could pass away of a heart attack days later, but just because they didn't have any symptoms or any pain doesn't mean that problem wasn't building up in the background, right? So having said that, we should never base the absence of symptoms, like not having pain, for being healthy, right? Health is more than just the absence of symptoms.
So key thing, and just as this is my mind, in my mind, and obviously being, talking to patients over the last now almost few decades, is great. Now I have, let's say, forward head posture. How does that affect me? Number one, the easy part I think to maybe understand for people is that as our heads go forward, there will be more pressure, more gravity, more stress on our neck. So our muscles are going to be tighter. They're going to affect the neck, the head, the shoulders. So that could cause headaches, neck pain, shoulder pain, tingling and numbness down the arms. For every inch the head goes forward, there's an extra 10 pounds of pressure.
It effectively doubles the weight of the head every inch.
Right.
Yeah.
So people say, yes, my muscles are always tight. I go for a massage, and a few days later I'm back to square one because the problem is still there. That effect is still there. So we could know that, yes, if these kids are 6 and 7 years old with forward head posture, we could very easily say, well, you know what, whether it's in 5 years, 10 years from now, there will probably be effects in terms of pain.
And arthritis, and spinal breakdown, right? The decay of the spine, because we know the same thing, as that head goes forward, it abnormally loads, it puts bad pressure on the spine and breaks the spine down much faster as well.
So the spine will age prematurely
and cause things like pain. So pain will show up at some point because of this. It's almost guaranteed.
Now the key thing, and I think the interesting part for both of us, is over the last probably few years, there's been so much more research that's being done, not on necessarily the effects of bad posture and pain, because we know that, but it's the effect of bad posture on the inside, right? The visceral part, our organs, all that stuff. So talk about that a little bit.
Hundreds of articles are coming out on that. And some of the newest stuff, they're looking at memory more and mood, right? Because yes, they were looking at first a lot on how it's affecting organ function and pressure in the abdomen, and now they're looking at how it's affecting our brain and our nervous system. So 2 recent articles within the past few years, one of them found that with people with a stooped or that rounded shoulder, head forward posture, had an increased negative mood, right? Very interesting, just a very basic research project that they did. But then what was even more interesting is when they were trying to have those people recover from this bad mood, right? The people that were in a stooped forward posture could not recover from this bad mood like those that had an upright posture.
So it's kind of like the catch-22, the vicious circle.
Which one came first, right? Is it the bad mood that causes us to adopt this bad posture, and or does this bad posture, prevent us from sort of recovering from what we'll call emotional traumas or these negative emotional things that can happen in our lives?
Now, I'm a father of 3 boys. My oldest one is turning 15 soon, so I could say that sometimes moods can be an issue, in the house. But what you're saying is that it could be a bigger issue, especially now if we're talking about forward head posture. That could cause them to be affect their mood. But then even worse is now they're having a harder time recovering.
Correct.
From getting back to, let's say, if you want to call it, their old self.
So that's right. Yeah. So they're kind of in this negative, this vicious cycle, in this bad mood, and yet you're right, they can't snap out of it because they're still in this forward posture, this bad rounded posture.
Now, I know for both of us, we see it, on a daily basis. But my concern is, let's say this research study is for 6 and 7-year-olds, right?
Yep.
Right now, our generation, we did not grow up with, some kind of a device that forced our heads forward.
Yes.
So now we have 3-year-olds, 2-year-olds that are watching their parents, device while their parents are shopping or they're whatever there is. So kids are growing up with their head down. Now they're 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 years old playing video games on their phone. Like last week, there was a teenager that came in, and her average screen time was 7 to 8 hours a day.
It's unbelievable.
So now they're spending so much time in that bad position. So where are things gonna end up?
And I don't even think we know yet. Like, this is research that's being done, right? And a lot of these, they're screening these kids, and when they're doing this memory work and this mood work like this, they're looking at older adults.
Right.
So, and this one, they were looking at the ability for them to recall and have, I guess, memory recall.
Right.
And they were saying that, again, the further the head went forward, the poorer the memory. And this is in adults, 50s, 60s, 70s. So imagine what the research is going to look like when these 6 and 7-year-olds get into their 50s and 60s and 70s. If they've spent their whole lives in this position, how is it going to affect them? Because a lot of these older adults, again, they probably grew up on the farm or grew up doing things in a much more upright posture. And so some of these health problems are only occurring later in life, where we're seeing these young kids developing this stuff really early in life. So yeah, it's...
So the key thing there too is chiropractic's been around for over 100 years.
Yep.
And during that time, yes, it's been able to help people have a healthy spine, healthy nerve system, feel better, more energy, all that stuff. But I really think that over these next few decades, really our main work will probably be just helping people recover from their bad posture and trying to maintain them so that because we can't get away from computers, phones, all that stuff. So we're basically going to be just helping people maintain as great of a posture as they possibly can.
Absolutely.
So what could we do, or what could we help people with in terms of now I know that either I have bad posture or other people have bad posture that I'm looking at, whether it's family members, people I work with.
Right.
What could we do?
Well, first of all, again, don't base anything off of symptoms, because as we just talked about,
right.
A lot of people have bad posture without knowing it, because the biggest thing, Dan, is we don't look at ourselves from the side. So you would know yourself if you had this forward rounded posture unless someone mentioned it to you, right? So step one is ask, your loved ones, family members, people that see you day to day at work, ask them what they think of your posture, and try to find honest people, obviously, that will tell you the truth. But ask them, when you look at me, is my head going forward? Are my shoulders rounding? Try to become aware of the fact that maybe you do have bad posture.
And I think that's really the really first step, because when we see patients here, we always check their posture first, right? Yeah. And so one of the key things for a lot of people is just even realizing it or seeing themselves in that posture is the first step for them to recover. Because now if they know that they have it, then when they're going off, to work, when they're on their phones, they're aware of it, and now being able to do something about it. So number 2 is just be aware, and when you're doing it, whatever you're doing during your day, staying as straight up as you can.
Correct, yeah. So find out, is there a postural problem? Then 2, being aware of it, in your day-to-day life, so that when you are in that forward posture, you can actively think, okay, I need to do something to get out of this posture. Right, so number 3 is, well, what can we do to get out of that posture?
What exercises could we give them, Dr. Pascal?
So we'll give them 3 very simple, basic exercises. So you could look probably all of these up on YouTube and find plenty of videos. Very simple for the postural muscles and bringing the head back. Number 1 is called the Brugger relief position.
How do you spell that?
Oh, jeez.
I'm thinking it's B-R-U-G-E-R.
G-E-R or B-R-U-E-G-G-E-R.
Oh,
there's a few different variations of it, but I'm sure if you Google the Brugger relief position, it'll come up.
Yeah, so show me how that basically looks like and kind of like walk me through it.
So it's just, if you're sitting in your chair at your desk, for instance, right, you would sit upright, so kind of lift your head as tall as you can, right, and you would squeeze your shoulder blades and elbows back. So your elbows are kind of tucked to your sides exactly, and then what you would do is you would rotate your arms backwards, trying to squeeze your shoulder blades back, and at the same time trying to bring your head back, so retracting your head.
So really the feeling that we should get is our rib cage is going forward as, let's say, our shoulders are going back as our heads are going back. So really like that proud posture, or however you want to call it, rib cage forward, shoulders back.
And what's important about that is just you're taking your arms into what's called external rotation, right? And for the science nerds out there who want to know why we're doing it, when you're on a computer, on a cell phone, you're in a posture that's called internal rotation. So everything is rotated in. So the Brugger relief position helps you externally rotate to open things up. So that's part of the exercise there. Okay, so the Brugger relief position.
The other one is the opposite of what people are doing in terms of forward head posture. Now what we want to do is what we call retraction. So literally what we want to do there is bring our head back
as far as you can. So if you were looking at someone from the side, when they retract the head, you want the ear to be in line with the center of the shoulder. That's the ideal position. So you're trying to strengthen those muscles in bringing the head back. So again, that could be done sitting at your chair at your desk, or it could be done people doing quadruped, so on all 4. If you're doing like a yoga class, for instance, or you have a yoga mat at home, get on all 4s and drive that head back to get the shoulder in line with the ear.
If you're commuting to work and listening to this right now at a red light, literally just bring that head back against the headrest, squeeze and hold for a few seconds, relax, and obviously repeat that 10 times, ideally doing 3 sets of those.
You bet. And then lastly would be the wall angel. You could do this on the floor as well, but I like the wall because, again, upright posture, it really focuses or forces us to work those postural muscles. But the wall angel, basically, it's kind of like you would do a snow angel on the ground, but you're up against the wall, you bring your arms up to your sides at 90 degrees to your body, and you try and slide your arms up the wall while maintaining contact with your tailbone, your shoulders, and your head, and your arms have to stay in contact with the wall the whole time. Very challenging exercise, very, very effective for strengthening those postural muscles that get weak because of technology. Okay?
Fantastic. And lastly is get a checkup. Get a professional to check your posture, check your spine, to make sure, like we talked about, pain is not the first thing that we should be looking for, because number 1 is, where is our head? How is that affecting us? We know it's affecting the insides. We know it's affecting our mood, our memory. So we need to do it early enough, because the key thing for me is that if we're having major issues in the population in their 60s and 70s, and we know from research that it's starting at the age of 6 or 7, is that new generation going to look like, feel like? What kind of health are they going to have later on in life? So it's way easier to get a checkup and get that corrected now, versus trying to undo decades of repetitive bad posture.
Much easier, yes, much easier. The difference when someone comes in at 7 years old, having been in that posture for potentially 50 years, versus a kid that's been there for a year or 2, correcting that spinal problem in the 6 or 7 year old versus 60 or 70 year old is obviously exponentially easier.
So where can they go to, let's say if they're not in Winnipeg or close to where we are, where can they go to find a chiropractor that could help them?
Great question. So dentaldocs.com. So we can include a link in the show notes for on the YouTube page in case you want to just click on that. So that's a website that'll take you North America wide, might even be worldwide now. And what that is, it's a directory of chiropractors or health professionals, could even be physical therapists, that are trained in looking at the spinal problems and how that affects your posture. Okay, so yeah, dentalrolldocs.com, you type in your address and you'll find the closest person to you that would have the training to give you a proper postural and spinal exam for that purpose.
Fantastic.
Okay?
I think this is a great topic.
Absolutely.
It's all like always. It's been great chatting with you.
Hope you enjoyed the commute.
Absolutely. Enjoy your day.
We'll see you next time.